Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a brightly lit pharmacy aisle.
Oh, the absolute worst place to be when you're not feeling well.
Right. It is peak cold and allergy season, and you are just absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
You've got that terrible, heavy, stuffy nose where you can't even draw a single breath through your nostrils, you know? Your head feels like it weighs 50 pounds.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
And you're staring at this massive wall of brightly colored boxes. Like there's red ones, blue ones, daytime, nighttime, maximum strength.
Multi-symptom, yeah.
Exactly. And you're really just hoping to find some kind of chemical miracle that will let you sleep through the night.
It is a completely overwhelming experience for anyone, honestly. You look at that wall and you assume you're looking at a carefully curated selection of scientific breakthroughs, right?
You would hope so.
But in reality, you're staring at this highly confusing landscape of biological levers, bizarre historical accidents, and massive regulatory compromises.
And that right there is exactly why, for today's deep dive into our stack of pharmacology research, we are tackling decongestants.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. Our mission today isn't just to figure out how to clear a stuffy nose. We are going to explore a story that spans, like, 2,000 years of ancient Chinese medicine.
Which is fascinating all on its own.
Totally. Plus, we'll unravel the cellular mechanics of why you actually feel stuffed up and expose this hidden biological trap that you might be unwittingly falling into right now.
Yeah. To really make sense of what we're looking at on those pharmacy shelves, we actually have to clear up a foundational misconception first.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, a lot of people assume a cold medicine is meant to, cure the cold.
Right, that it's attacking the sickness.
Exactly. But a decongestant is not a drug that kills germs. It doesn't fight off a virus at all, and it definitely doesn't shorten the duration of your illness by even a single minute.
So it's not a cure?
Not at all. It is a highly specific pharmacological tool that's engineered to do one singular thing, and that's shrink swollen blood vessels.
And to understand why shrinking blood vessels matters, we kind of have to look at the anatomy of the stuffy nose itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think most of us, we assume that a stuffy nose means our nasal passages are just packed solid with mucus.
That's the logical assumption, yeah.
But when you look at the actual biology from the sources, the mucosal lining of the nose contains these vascular structures. They're called erectile-like venous sinusoids.
Right.
And when they get irritated by an allergen or a viral infection, they basically just engorge with blood.
They fill right up.
Yeah. I like to think of it like blowing air into a balloon inside a very tight hallway.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Thanks. So the balloon swells up, it takes up all the available space, and it presses against the walls. There's simply no physical room for air to get past it.
And the clinical reality matches that analogy perfectly. The tissue literally physically expands and blocks the mechanical flow of air. But the pharmacology to address that expanded balloon is actually quite elegant. What's fascinating here is that decongestants belong to a class of drugs called sympathomimetic amines.
Okay, breaking that word down, sympathomimetic. So they're artificially mimicking the sympathetic nervous system.
Exactly. They mimic our body's natural fight-or-flight chemicals, specifically adrenaline and noradrenaline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When you take a decongestant, these molecules travel through your bloodstream to the nose, and they target very specific receptors. These are located on the smooth muscle that sort of wraps around those engorged blood vessels.
Okay.
We call these alpha-adrenergic receptors.
Okay, let me make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. You introduce this adrenaline mimic into the body.
Yeah.
It finds this alpha-1 receptor on the muscle around the blood vessel, and it effectively acts like a mechanical switch.
It acts exactly like a switch. Activating these alpha-1 receptors triggers the smooth muscle to physically contract.
So it squeezes.
Yes. And when the muscle tightens, the blood vessel narrows. We call this vasoconstriction. Because the vessel is now narrower, the volume of blood flowing into those sinusoids drops significantly.
Oh, I see. So the engorged tissue essentially just deflates.
Exactly. The balloon loses its air, the hallway is clear, and you can finally breathe again.
So it's pure mechanics. I mean, we aren't healing the body at all. We are literally just forcing the pipes to squeeze shut.
That is exactly what's happening.
But the story of how humanity actually found the chemicals to pull that specific switch is a wild ride.
Oh, it really is.
Because obviously if you have a cold, you can't just inject yourself with a syringe of pure adrenaline.
No, that would be a terrible idea. Adrenaline breaks down way too fast in the body, for one. And requiring a hypodermic needle for a runny nose is just a bit extreme.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So scientists had to find a different molecule to trigger this alpha-1 deflation.
And the search for that molecule requires looking back long before pharmacology was even a formal discipline. The prototype chemical for modern decongestants is a compound called ephedrine. And ephedrine actually originates from a plant called Ephedra sinica.
Which is also known in traditional Chinese medicine as ma huang, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the source notes point out that ma huang has been used in Chinese herbal medicine for roughly 2,000 years for respiratory complaints.
2 millennia.
It's fascinating to think that people were, brewing teas from this plant centuries ago, unwittingly achieving the exact same alpha-1 receptor activation we are talking about today.
Yeah, the practical application was absolutely there, but the formal chemistry took a long time to catch up.
Right.
The active chemical itself, ephedrine, wasn't actually isolated until 1885. It was done by a Japanese chemist named Nagayoshi Nagai. He successfully extracted the pure compound from the plant.
But according to the timeline here in the research, after Nagai isolated it, it basically just sat on a laboratory shelf as a chemical curiosity for almost 40 years.
Just collecting dust, basically.
Why would a perfectly isolated, highly effective chemical just sit there while people all over the world suffered from colds and asthma? What made the Western medical establishment finally pay attention to it?
Well, the delay really came down to a lack of systematic pharmacological testing. In the late 19th century, having the chemical didn't automatically mean you understood its clinical applications or its safety profile.
Oh, that makes sense.
The real pivot didn't happen until the early 1920s, through the work of two pharmacologists, Carl F. Schmidt and K.K. Chen.
Okay.
They were working in China and later at the University of Michigan and Eli Lilly. Chen began systematically studying the physiological effects of ephedrine.
Like injecting it and measuring the result?
Exactly. He injected it into animal models and meticulously recorded the spikes in blood pressure, the changes in heart rate, and most importantly, the dramatic opening of the airways.
So Chen essentially proved the mechanics of what the traditional healers already knew.
He mapped the mechanism, yeah. Chen and Schmidt realized they had found the holy grail the medical community was searching for.
Which was?
A molecule structurally similar to adrenaline, but crucially, it was orally active.
Oh, meaning you could swallow it as a pill.
Yes, and its effects lasted for hours instead of just minutes. They published this landmark paper in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1924.
Wow.
And that paper effectively bridged Eastern traditional medicine and modern Western pharmacology.
And from that bridge, the family tree of modern decongestants essentially splits into two main branches.
It does.
So let's look at the first branch, pseudoephedrine. The notes mention pseudoephedrine is technically a stereoisomer of ephedrine.
Yeah, that's the chemical term.
It's like a molecular mirror image. It was isolated way back in 1889, but didn't become a commercial superstar until 1976 when it launched as the active ingredient in Sudafed.
Right, Sudafed.
But if ephedrine worked so well, why did we need its mirror image?
Well, the shift to pseudoephedrine was entirely about mitigating side effects. Ephedrine was highly effective, but because it mimics fight-or-flight chemical soup broadly, it caused significant central nervous system stimulation.
Oh, so it made people jittery.
Very jittery. Patients felt anxious, their hearts were racing, and they couldn't sleep. The beauty of a stereoisomer, that mirror image structure, is how it interacts with the body's receptors.
So it's sort of a lock and key situation?
Think of it like a left-handed glove trying to fit onto a right hand. Because the pseudoephedrine molecule is shaped backward compared to ephedrine, it still fits perfectly into the alpha-1 receptors in the nasal passages to cause that vasoconstriction.
Okay, so it still clears the nose.
Yes, but its altered shape means it no longer successfully binds to many of the central nervous system receptors in the brain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it gave patients the clear airway they desperately wanted, but largely isolated that relief from the severe jitteriness.
That is brilliant chemical engineering.
Truly.
Okay, so we have pseudoephedrine as our miracle pill. Now let's look at the other branch of the family tree, phenylephrine.
Right, the other big player.
This one was synthesized in 1927 and eventually marketed in 1938 as neosynephrine nasal drops. Why develop a totally different molecule for a liquid drop?
Well, during that era, doctors frequently used cocaine-derived topical vasoconstrictors for severe nasal and sinus procedures.
Cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine is actually an incredibly powerful vasoconstrictor, but, it obviously comes with severe dangerous issues.
I mean, yeah, addiction, tissue damage.
Systemic toxicity, all of it. The medical field desperately needed a safe, adrenaline-like molecule that could be applied directly to the tissue without the dangers of cocaine.
And phenylephrine fit the bill.
It fit that requirement beautifully as a topical drop.
You would think that by 1938, the cold medicine aisle would be a scientific utopia.
You really would.
We had pseudoephedrine working brilliantly as an oral pill, and we had phenylephrine working safely as a topical drop. The problem was basically solved.
In theory, yes.
But here's where it gets really interesting. That utopian vision brings us to one of the greatest ironies in modern pharmacology.
Oh, this is the craziest part.
Fast forward to September 2023, and the FDA convenes a special advisory committee to look at standard over-the-counter oral phenylephrine.
Right, oral phenylephrine.
This is the stuff you find in Sudafed, PE, Dayquil, Benadryl D, virtually every major oral cold medicine on the shelf today.
It's everywhere.
And in a massive 16-0 vote, the panel unanimously declared that this drug, when swallowed as a pill, is completely useless. It is literally no better than a placebo.
A unanimous 16-0 vote from an FDA advisory panel is a rare, striking event.
I can imagine.
To understand why a drug that millions of people have been swallowing for decades was suddenly declared functionally useless, we have to look at the pharmacokinetics of how our digestive system protects us.
Okay.
Specifically, an obstacle course known as first-pass metabolism.
So swallowing a drug is an entirely different journey than spraying it into your nose or injecting it into a vein.
Completely different.
It has to survive a serious biological gauntlet. It sounds to me almost like an incredibly strict customs checkpoint at a border.
A customs checkpoint analogy is spot on. When you swallow a pill containing phenylephrine, it lands in your stomach, dissolves, and then attempts to cross through the gut wall into the liver.
Right.
And this all happens before it is ever allowed onto the national highway, which is your systemic bloodstream. Now, the gut and the liver are heavily guarded by an enzyme called monoamine oxidase, or MAO.
And these MAO enzymes are the customs border guards?
Exactly. Their entire job is to patrol for rogue amines and dismantle them before they can affect the body.
Oh, wow.
When oral phenylephrine hits the gut and liver, these MAO guards chemically confiscate and destroy almost all of it.
Really? Almost all of it?
Yeah, the clinical estimates for oral phenylephrine's bioavailability, meaning the actual amount of the original dose that survives customs and makes it into your blood, is a measly 1 to 3%.
That is shockingly low.
It's nothing.
So if I buy a box of cold medicine and take a standard 10 milligram tablet of phenylephrine, I'm only getting maybe a couple tenths of a milligram of active drug into my system?
Pretty much. And that tiny fraction of a milligram simply isn't enough to travel all the way up to the nasal tissue and activate those alpha-1 receptors.
So it doesn't flip the switch.
It doesn't flip the switch. It doesn't deflate the balloon. Now, compare that with our old friend, oral pseudoephedrine.
Okay, the mirror image drug.
Right. When you swallow pseudoephedrine, its specific molecular structure allows it to slip right past those MAO enzymes.
Oh, it fools the guards.
It survives the digestive gauntlet largely intact.
Yep.
Its bioavailability is upward of 90%.
90% compared to 1 to 3%.
Exactly. It reaches the bloodstream, hits the nasal tissue, and works beautifully.
I have to express some serious frustration on behalf of the listener here.
I don't blame you.
Because I'm looking at our source notes, and there was a major meta-analysis published by a researcher named Hatton and colleagues back in 2007.
Ah, yes. The Hatton study.
And that study clearly showed oral phenylephrine didn't work at standard doses. If we had the data in 2007, why did we, the consumers, spend the next 16 years paying for placebos?
It's a great question.
And more importantly, where did the drug that actually works pseudoephedrine go? Why was it replaced on the open shelves by a dummy pill?
The answer to that exposes a profound intersection between pharmacology and the law.
Okay.
The shift in what was available on the pharmacy shelf wasn't driven by medical science or a desire for better health outcomes at all. It was driven entirely by law enforcement.
Oh, right.
Specifically, the U.S. Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act of 2005.
The meth laws.
Exactly. Pseudoephedrine is a highly effective decongestant, but chemically, it is also a direct precursor. With a relatively simple chemical reduction process, pseudoephedrine can be converted into methamphetamine.
I see.
When the law passed in 2005 to curb the explosion of illicit meth production, pseudoephedrine was pulled off the open retail shelves and placed behind the pharmacy counter.
Right, you have to ask the pharmacist for it now.
Yeah, you now have to show a government ID, you have to sign a tracking logbook, and you are legally limited in how many milligrams you can purchase per month.
So basically, because of a law enforcement issue, my local pharmacy took away the one oral drug that actually cleared my sinuses.
And the manufacturers had a massive problem on their hands.
Because they had nothing to sell.
Right. They needed a substitute for all their daytime and nighttime multi-symptom formulas so they could keep selling boxes on the open floor, and they needed it fast.
And so they chose phenylephrine.
They chose phenylephrine, often rebranding their products with a prominent PE on the box.
Oh, Sudafed PE.
Exactly. They chose it simply because its chemical structure means it cannot be easily converted into methamphetamine.
Wow.
The industry traded a highly effective drug that carried an abuse diversion risk for a drug with absolutely zero diversion risk, but which unfortunately operates as a near placebo when swallowed. We optimize the pharmacy aisle for drug enforcement, not for clearing a stuffy nose.
That is wild. So if the readily available pill is a dud, and the pill that actually works requires me to stand in line during pharmacy hours and feel like I'm doing something illicit.
Which nobody wants to do when they're sick.
Exactly. A listener might logically think, I'm just going to bypass the pills entirely. I'll use a topical nasal spray like Afrin.
Ah, the nasal sprays.
You spray it directly into the nose. It completely bypasses the gut and those MAO customs guards, and it should work instantly.
Right.
It does work instantly and powerfully. Modern nasal sprays typically use topical imidazolines, such as oxymetazoline.
Okay.
Because you are applying the chemical directly to the site of the swollen tissue, it hits those alpha-1 receptors immediately. You get profound relief in 5 to 10 minutes, and the airway opens up completely for 8 to 12 hours.
For someone suffering from a severe cold, that feels like an absolute miracle.
It really does.
But there's a massive catch, isn't there?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the warning label on these bottles, and it always says do not use for more than 3 to 5 days.
Yes, that label is very important.
What actually happens if you keep using that spray?
Well, if you push past that 3 to 5 day window, you fall into a clinical trap known as rhinitis medicamentosa.
That sounds intense.
It is. Because oxymetazoline is so incredibly potent at activating those alpha-1 receptors, the body starts to adapt if you use it continuously.
Adapt. The tissue in your nose essentially realizes it is being artificially squeezed shut all the time, depriving the tissue of normal blood flow. To protect itself, the alpha receptors start to downregulate.
Oh, I see.
The tissue physically alters itself to become less sensitive to the drug.
So the body is actually fighting back against the medicine.
It fights back aggressively.
Yeah.
As the receptors downregulate, the body also senses this localized lack of blood flow, a state called ischemia, and it panics.
It panics.
Yeah, it starts producing a massive compensatory buildup of vasodilating signals, primarily nitric oxide. The body is desperately pumping nitric oxide to force those blood vessels back open so the tissue can breathe.
Oh, wow.
So when the chemical dose of the nasal spray finally wears off after a few hours, the vessels don't just return to their normal baseline.
You don't.
No, they slingshot. The flood of nitric oxide causes them to overshoot into a state of severe engorgement that is significantly worse than the original stuffiness that made you reach for the bottle in the first place.
It's like building up a tolerance to coffee.
Yes, exactly.
You drink a cup every day, and eventually the baseline shifts. 1 cup does nothing. You need a triple espresso just to stave off the withdrawal headache.
Right.
But with these nasal sprays, the withdrawal is localized right in your breathing passages. When that rebound hits, your airways literally swell shut. You are physically incapable of breathing through your nose unless you take another hit of the drug.
And the trap is brutal because it drives behavior. You get that terrifying rebound congestion. You feel like you are suffocating. So what do?
You instinctively reach for the spray again.
Exactly. You get a few hours of relief, but then it wears off, the nitric oxide floods back in, and the rebound is even stronger. It becomes a vicious, localized addiction cycle.
That is so scary.
There are actually documented case reports in the medical literature of patients using these over-the-counter decongestant sprays multiple times a day for a decade, simply because their noses will cement shut if they stop.
A decade? That is terrifying. And looking at the broader picture we've painted today, you pointed out in your notes 2 incredible paradoxes about this whole decongestant landscape.
Yeah, these paradoxes really highlight how strange this all is. The first paradox fundamentally challenges how we perceive drug safety.
How so?
Well, a topical nasal spray inherently feels safer to a consumer because you aren't swallowing a pill that distributes a chemical throughout your entire body. You're just spraying a tiny mist into your nose.
Yeah, it feels much more localized and harmless.
Yet that safe-feeling topical spray is the exact vehicle that causes this brutal localized dependency cycle. Meanwhile, the systemic pill pseudoephedrine, which goes everywhere in your bloodstream and carries real cardiovascular side effects like elevated heart rate and blood pressure,
Right.
That pill essentially never causes this localized rebound congestion in the nose.
Wow, that is a huge paradox. And the second
The
paradox?
second involves another famous decongestant failure from our recent history, a drug called phenylpropanolamine, or PPA.
I think I remember that one.
You probably do. This was once a wildly popular oral decongestant found in major brands like Dexatrim and Contac. But in the year 2000, a major study out of Yale linked PPA to hemorrhagic strokes, particularly in young women.
Oh, awful.
The FDA requested its immediate removal from the market. Now, that was a genuine, terrifying safety failure, where the drug was actively harming people.
Right, a real danger.
Contrast that with phenylephrine, which stayed on the market for 16 years after we knew it didn't work. Phenylephrine isn't a safety failure. It's merely an efficacy failure. It won't hurt you. It just won't help you at all.
So if someone is listening to this right now and they realize they've already fallen into the rhinitis medicamentosa trap with a nasal spray, how do they actually get out of it?
Breaking that cycle usually requires a difficult commitment. You basically have to quit the spray cold turkey.
That sounds miserable.
It is. The withdrawal period is highly uncomfortable because the rebound congestion will be severe for several days. Often, doctors will recommend bridging that miserable period with a prescription or over-the-counter nasal corticosteroid, like fluticasone.
Okay, so the steroid helps?
Yeah, the steroid doesn't shrink the vessels instantly, but it helps manage the upstream cellular inflammation while those alpha receptors slowly resensitize and the nitric oxide levels normalize over a week or two.
Wow.
In severe cases, patients even have to wean off one nostril at a time just to endure it.
One nostril at a time. Okay, let's unpack this. So how do you actually survive your next cold without falling into these traps?
Good question.
Now that we know the history, the meth laws, and the biological slingshots, let's run through a rapid fire of some common misconceptions to clear the air for the listener.
Sounds good.
First misconception. People often take decongestants right before bed to help them sleep, assuming they are sedatives like some allergy medicines.
This is a crucial distinction that often ruins a sick person's night. Sympathomimetic decongestants are stimulants, not sedatives.
Right, the adrenaline thing.
Exactly. Remember, they mimic your fight-or-flight chemicals. They can cause severe insomnia, jitteriness, and elevate both your heart rate and blood pressure.
So taking them at bedtime is a recipe for lying awake staring at the ceiling.
Exactly. This is why people with hypertension or heart disease need to be very careful with them. This mechanism is entirely different from a first-generation antihistamine like diphenhydramine, which blocks a completely different receptor and actively depresses the central nervous system, causing drowsiness.
Which means we need to be really careful about what we're actually taking. And a decongestant isn't fixing the underlying problem anyway, right?
Correct. They only relieve the mechanical symptom of vascular swelling. They have zero antiviral or antibacterial action. They do not fight the infection.
That makes total sense when we look at combination products. You see boxes everywhere for things like Claritin D or Benadryl D. I'm deducing that the D stands for decongestant.
It does.
But why are they mixing an allergy medicine with a decongestant in the same pill?
Because they are attempting to tackle two different mechanisms of the exact same miserable experience.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, an allergic reaction causes your body to release histamine. That histamine binds to H1 receptors and triggers the itching, the sneezing, and the runny nose. And antihistamine blocks those receptors.
Right, that's what Claritin does.
Exactly. But histamine also indirectly contributes to the blood vessels swelling up. The antihistamine is great at stopping the itch, but it's not very effective at shrinking the vessels once they are already engorged with blood.
Oh, I see.
So manufacturers pair it with a decongestant, which hits the alpha-1 receptors and physically forces the vessels to constrict. Two different biological targets working together to give you one clear airway.
It is amazing how much biological engineering and legal maneuvering goes into just trying to get a single decent breath of air when you're sick.
It really is.
So, to quickly recap our journey today, we learned that the stuffy feeling in your nose isn't just mucus, it's actually a biological balloon inflating with blood.
Yeah.
We learned that to deflate that balloon, we use alpha-1 receptor agonists drugs whose lineage traces back 2,000 years to ancient Chinese herbal medicine.
Ma Huang.
Exactly. We discovered the massive regulatory irony where first-pass metabolism makes oral phenylephrine a total dud, but it dominates the pharmacy shelves simply because it can't be turned into illicit street drugs.
The customs guards get it all.
Right. And finally, we uncovered the 3 to 5 day ticking clock of topical oxymetazoline sprays and the brutal biological trap of rebound congestion.
It really completely reframes that walk down the pharmacy aisle.
For sure.
And if we connect everything we've discussed today to the bigger picture, it leaves us with a fascinating, somewhat provocative thought to ponder. We've seen how the 2005 meth laws accidentally created a massive, federally sanctioned market for a placebo-adjacent drug, phenylephrine, forcing sick consumers to jump through legal hoops and show ID just to get the real relief of pseudoephedrine.
Yeah.
It raises a critical question for you to explore the next time you are staring at that wall of brightly colored boxes. How many other over-the-counter remedies in our medicine cabinets are designed more by law enforcement agendas, historical accidents, and regulatory loopholes than by actual, effective pharmacology?
It definitely makes you want to read those tiny ingredient labels a lot more closely, doesn't it?
It really does.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope the next time you're battling a cold, you'll know exactly how to navigate that pharmacy aisle like an absolute expert. Stay curious, read the fine print, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.